Hey there, today I'm sharing my latest winning strategy for fantasy football. We're diving into action by handpicking players for the kickoff game between the Detroit Lions and the Kansas City Chiefs. If you're ready to step up your fantasy game, stick around and let's get started. First up, we're going to break down the game and some of the strategies. Today we're going to be playing NFL Showdown Captain Mode. It is a fantasy sports game where you pick players from a single NFL game. You're going to assign a captain to your team. The captain earns 1.5 times the fantasy points, adding an extra layer of strategy to the mix. The catch is that they also cost twice as much. Before you start crafting your winning lineup, do your homework. Research is essential. Dive into the matchup details, recent team performance, offensive and defensive stats, injuries, and even weather conditions that might affect gameplay. The captain can truly make or break your lineup. Choose wisely. Offer a player with high potential to perform well. This is often a star player who's expected to have a standout game. But remember, balance is key. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. So contrary to my fluke in winning first place, I highly recommend for you to not limit yourself to just one team or position. While you must have one player from the opposing team, it is much better to diversify your picks. Game flow is typically something that people tend to forget. You need to consider if it's a high-scoring showdown or a defensive struggle. In high-scoring games, you need to pick the hottest players. In defensive battles, you often need to pay attention to running backs and even the defensive team. I wish I could just give you the formula for finding a hidden gem, but the best way to find your value pick is to really look at someone's potential. Look for talents, look for people who have the most opportunity, and find the most favorable matchups. A lot of new players forget to update their list. Now, a lot of people get injured right before the game, or they get put on the reserve list, or they get taken off, and now your whole draft is messed up. So be sure to pay attention and be informed about those injuries. One of the top stats that people love paying attention to is the ownership percentage. It's recommended to balance uniqueness with strong, reliable performers. With so much information that's available for free, I highly recommend staying flexible and keeping an eye out for expert analysis. It is pretty good to get some extra insights, player matchup strategies, and potential sleepers. Just keep learning more and see what everyone else is thinking. Lastly, do remember that fantasy sports are all about fun. I hope you find these tips helpful. Let's get to the exciting part. Let's draft some players for the first game of the season. The Lions vs. Chiefs will be an exciting game. As the reigning Super Bowl champions, the Chiefs are the favorites. Let's take a quick look at the defense. These are some of the stats from last year. They typically average around 6 to 7 points per game. One thing I do want to highlight here is that they do have more interceptions when they're playing at home. This is where I would check out the Lions quarterback and see if he's known to throw interceptions and kind of gauge where they're at. The Lions are pretty close. They average around 5 to 7 points. It is noted that in away games they do have less sacks, so that's something to keep in mind, but interceptions are the same. Now when you think about the opposing quarterback Mahomes, you're going to find out that, well, he's more likely not to throw an interception, so you could probably avoid that, and I would most likely pick the Chiefs on this one. For kickers, I do like the Kansas City Chiefs kicker Butker. He's doing pretty well. He's always been averaging around 8 points. They score pretty high, so he gets to kick more often as well, so that's good. So I'm reading the news here, and this player actually moved to the Bears practice squad. Really key and crucial. That means he won't be playing in this game. We're going to move on to the next kicker, and that is Patterson. In home games, he averaged around 7 points. In away games, he averaged around 8 to 9 points. So that's actually even better in away games. So if you were to add a kicker, you can choose one or the other. They are pretty close. We're going to go ahead and look at Mahomes and Golf. This man always scores really high. He can run the ball if he needs to, he can kind of bob and weave if he needs to, and his players can catch the ball. His average points is really high, from 23 to 26, but if you actually look at it, aside from Super Bowl, it just averages 26 points. That is really, really high. On average, he does have more attempts at passing whenever they're at home, so that's something that you do want to consider. So Goff is an interesting quarterback because it really depends on how they choose to play the game. If they are more run heavy, then he doesn't throw as much, and if his players are healthy like St. Brown, you would want to put him on the team because St. Brown can definitely catch the ball. The Lions look like they do better at home and they are not as great away, so I'll probably stick with Mahomes with this one and kind of shy away from golf. The Lions actually lost one of their key running backs from last year. You're going to see a new player, that is Gibbs. There's not much information on him, so what I would look at is see how he's done over the summer and kind of learn over the preseason and see what he's got. This team often like to split it up too, so he probably will share the touches with the other guys. Sharing touches with Gibbs will most likely be David Montgomery. They will be running down the field, so it could be either one. And your backup running back option on this team is Reynolds. He was there last year and they kind of re-signed him. Most likely he won't see much action. One of the more expensive running backs on Kansas City is Pacheco, and if you were to look at his stats, you're going to be like, well, he's not so great. His points from 7 to 13, but if you really look at the game log last year, he only started playing like later on. You can see like a lot of these are zeros. So later on, he did get more touches, he did get more touchdowns, so that's something to keep in mind. He's most likely going to continue to get more touches. And then last year, McKinnon actually did really well as well, so I would look to either add Pacheco or McKinnon on my roster. So the tight end market is kind of unfair, and that's precisely because of Kelce. And you look at Kelce's point, he is Mahomes' man, so his points are high, his predictions are high. You can see 19 to 20. He does better in home games as well, so that's something that I would definitely consider adding him onto my players. Now, even if he doesn't get touchdowns, he always touches the ball, so that's something to keep in mind. The rest of the group is just kind of there. I would considering add them to my team because they are low in cost, so if they were to magically get a touchdown, this is the one player that would give you an edge. And I would actually say the same thing for wide receivers. If you go down to the bottom, the ones that are 200s, they are most likely going to do better. Even if they get a couple of throws, they can make your money worth it, especially if you're trying to fit more of the expensive guys. Wide receivers are where we start seeing some questionable players, and that's just from injuries. Some of the players may not be playing as much during week 1, and they can just kind of save up for later on during the season. So I will look into that. I'd still think that Brown will definitely be a hot pick, especially if he gets the ball from Goff. He also does better in the home games, just like Goff, so you can kind of see ranges from 12 to even 22 points, and it just depends, right? Tony leads in the wide receivers for the Chiefs, but you can see here his fantasy points are kind of low, from 4 to 7. That's because he did get injured, and he's also questionable, so most likely he might play, but will he be the touchdown man? It just depends. You might rather look at the running backs to see if they're getting the pass catching game. The player in the 6,000 range is Jones Jr. on the Lions, and it's hard to guess where he goes because sometimes he does like 3 points, sometimes he does 9 points, right? It really depends. And there are times where he does a little bit better, and that's when St. Brown is not there, so that's something that I do want to note. In terms of my selection for the rest of the guys, it really depends on who else I want to add onto this lineup. I would kind of ask myself who would actually have the potential to get a touchdown, and that's essentially my way of going. And then if I have enough room for them, because if I'm looking at Mahomes, I'm looking at Kelce, I'm already full in terms of my salary cap. I'm going to start with seeing if we can put Mahomes on the captain spot, so we're going to go ahead and look for him here in the captain. $18,300 is so much money. Now you have around $6,000 left for everybody else. If you're looking to add basically anybody that's more than that, like Kelce, it's really hard to fit. You would have to go down to like the 200 guys and all that. So let's try. I'm going to add the running backs because I think they probably will get the touches. Hilaire used to be the ones that get the most touch, but later on in the game, I think from injury and everything else, he started getting less, and the other guys essentially broke out. I'm just going to see if we can get one of the Lions running back there as the forward spot, and then we're going to look to see if we can add the defense team. They're known to do pretty good. Now, if we look at this, I actually have one of the Detroit players, and I still have $8,000 left. I would either go with one of the players here, so let me see if in terms of salary wise, I would consider going and looking at Gibbs for my other potential. I know doing all running back is kind of crazy, but essentially if you watch my other video, I won because I chose all running backs, right? That's kind of crazy, but it's possible. I wouldn't want to do it here, but I would select a wide receiver just to see who Mahomes would throw to other than the running backs, right? It would be Tony if he's not as questionable. But dropping down from that list, I would actually go a little bit down and choose Valdes-Scantling. He does get some more of a touchdown value too, so you would compare their stats there and see that he gets about 3 touchdowns in his home game. He doesn't get as many during the away game, so that's kind of nice to know, right? And if you look at Tony, he does have some stats there. He is a touchdown guy. He got one in the Super Bowl, but that is something there. But who's more likely, right? So between the two, I would probably go for Valdes-Scantling there, and I would still have $3,000 left. Now, if I don't want the Chiefs here and I don't want a defense team, I would probably add one of the kickers. Between the defense team, if you're saying that Detroit's not going to score at all, then the Chiefs are definitely high. Or if they're catching interceptions, they're doing like fumble, sacks, that is where they are high valued. And if they're not, then at most they're going to get 7 points. And the kicker, if Kansas City does better in terms of scoring, I would go back to the kicker on that one and put in probably more of the Patterson. He does pretty good. And especially if that team is going to struggle, they're probably going to be kicking more field goals. And the scoring for that is higher. So if he kicks in 3 of them, that would be about 9 points. And that's already higher than the expected fantasy here, so that's why you would want to add a kicker. Let me know in this challenge who you would pick as the captain. I'm definitely looking forward to what everybody else thinks. Thanks for watching.